Chapter 24. The Boardroom. Vestas sat in his chair, in the castle of the old Seneva fortress. Hundreds of years ago, this is where Olam had gathered and discussed war strategies. Even further back, it was where Kuvalik had defended against foreign invaders in the siege of the Grand Electric Throne, and won in a victory so senselessly coincidental that it seemed to prove destiny for anybody who did not yet believe. Vestas did not believe. Vestas was a man of science, and a man of his word. Heslick had ordered him to remove the threads of the three dissenters, finally, to allow him to complete his studies on thread removal, and to eliminate their threat. He had been so close, too, but it was just his luck that saboteur Lion's Foot was one of the wrongdoers. I should never have let him near them. Vestas scrunched at one of his papers. He looked at it, and upon realizing its importance to his coming presentation, laid it on the table and ironed it flat with his palm. He glanced around the room for onlookers as he did so, and once satisfied that nobody had seen his egregious lack of judgment and disrespect for science, he grinned. The door to the boardroom opened. Vestas sat up like lightning, immediately swiveling in his chair to sit tall and at attention. Bokeeden came through the door first, his large metal sheeted wings collapsing into his back so that he could fit in. He did not expand them once through the constricting doorway. He strolled to take a seat and stared at Vestas. Bokeeden made Vestas viscerally uncomfortable. He had decided, after a few years of working with the Seneva, his beady pink eyes were emotionless, and there were no discernible facial features to be sensed under that raven-like helmet. Plus, the large plate wings were enough to make anyone squirm. He sneered at the sight of Bokeeden and caught a smile on the black Seneva's bird face that he felt must have been imagined. Vestas was about to slouch down again, to shuffle through his papers, when Heslick entered the room unannounced. Now he shot up to attention, more surprised than before. He bowed his head to Heslick, and Heslick did the same back. Heslick was smiling, so Vestas relaxed, if only a little bit. Heslick quickly took his seat at the head of the long table. These executive meetings were too small for the table they had been appointed, Vestas always noted. Sure, there was room for guest speakers, he supposed, but they rarely had guest speakers. Perhaps Olam's cabinet was bigger, he concluded. There was a seat reserved for himself, na Nargestor, the head of research. There was a seat for Bokeeden, na Sasarman, literally translating to the detector of secrets, but known as the investigatory head. There was a seat for Nafarku, the right-hand man, also occupied by Bokeeden. There was Nafara, clearly Heslick. Since Murakin's death and Lilawel's disappearance from the committee, the seats of ethical supervisor and spiritual leader were missing, respectively. An empty ethical supervisor chair irked Vestas. He worried that without somebody to appoint the rules properly, their vision of disabling the threads of wrongdoers could be crushed. Into the room, after Heslick, came a group of about 10 or so Seneva, all in armour, like Vestas, Bokeeden and Heslick, who occupied the empty chairs and standing room. They held important subcommittee positions. The level of bureaucracy here made Vestas dizzy, although maybe his dizziness came from the nerves he was feeling. He took a deep breath. Right, Heslick said. Seneva, Tano and Tona of Nafaras Nasuns. Let's get this underway without formality, shall we? There was a hushed agreement, a rumbling gurgle of slack-lipped teenagers which slipped across the room. Heslick took this as his cue to continue. There are many things to get through today. Firstly, Vestas. How has everything been in Melbourne, and with your research? Vestas took a sharp breath. He had not expected to be called up first. His lip quivered, but he managed to hold it into a grin. He straightened his papers and sat tall. Yes, well, research has been going quite well, I suppose. He started weakly. Heslick smiled. The most exciting revelation is that I am now certain of the efficacy of my thread removal equation. Really? Heslick marveled. How so? Well, I've had a steady stream of participants of all forms to gain quadridat off. The results have concluded that no matter how different we may perceive each other's threads to be, Seneva as a whole are very homogeneous. At the end of the day, the noted differences in thread qualifier wave were not significant, even for the most eccentric of threads. Well, this is great stuff, really, Heslick said. Now we've got a blanket effective last stand punishment for wrongdoers. Yes, it is exciting, Vestas relaxed. Heslick looked away, back to his papers, and Vestas was almost certain that he would be asked no further questions. He grinned and leaned back into his chair. And what about Eva Argol? Heslick asked. Vestas' eye twitched. Presenting her to Naxar Argol would do wonders for our relations. Yes, Vestas coughed. Do you remember the friends of hers I told you about? Zamel and Makey? Heslick asked. It's a shame that they chose to help her. I trust that you managed to remove their threads, as you did ask me for such permissions. Heslick tapped his fingers. Vestas gulped. I did ask for permission indeed, but they still have their threads attached. Vestas stumbled. That agent of yours, Lion's Foot, turned traitorous. He just finished beating 3 of them into the ground when he turned on me and took them off. I have no idea what they're planning now, but the 4 of them are quite dangerous to life and to our cause. If I'd have known Eva Argol was in town, I would not have sent a suspected French conspirator, no matter how unlikely it would seem that a fugitive girl would conspire with an agent of mine, Heslick said. I apologize. It's my fault that your plans fell through, and it is my fault that the Senaver people are now in danger. I'll address this. It is not your burden. Vesta struggled to say any words. An inordinately huge smile of relief plastered itself across his whole head, but he could have sighed his armor away if he'd wanted to. He slumped into the chair, swirling his fingers in his fists. He laughed from his nose. Thank you. Did you at least get to experiment on them? I heard that you had Makey. It was a shame to order his thread removed. I saw potential in that Senaver. Yes, well, don't fear that, my father. He's out there, Vestas groaned. And yes, I did manage to get data from all 3 of the Senaver, even Eva, who I did not manage to apprehend at the time. He reached into the bag by his side, from where he had produced his papers, and drew out a device, like an electric donut he used to read threads, but on the end of a radar gun. Another invention, he smiled, born from the fires of necessity. That's brilliant. You didn't tell us about this, Heslick gleamed. In all truth, my Farah, I have to have something positive to present today. Vestas joked, although in his heart he was not joking, and this meeting was going far better than he could have ever hoped. Those around the table joined in laughter. What did you find out about them? Heslick asked. A lot, although I'm not sure how useful it is, Vestas started. Eva Argol is a producer of blue flames. Her thread appeared to be entirely normal, with an energy density and quattro velocity well within the standard deviation of the mean. Her ability to produce such high energy flames is, however, not due to any greater efficiency with the energy. Faraver's physical efficiency of quattro conversion is almost identical, yet her flames are orange, nowhere near the blue of Eva Argol. There is something about the nature of creating flames that Eva Argol knows and that other Eva do not. An old family recipe, perhaps, Heslick joked. The board chuckled, then composed themselves. Nothing quantifiable by numbers, at least, Vestas noted. He looked back to his papers, his hands steady and confident now. He read off the rest of his findings. Makey has an incredibly odd thread. I was able to study it in detail. Nothing about it was strong. His abilities appeared to be at a level under his peers, and his power was lacking. The quattro velocity of his connections to Omicronius is low, and his arbitrary connection, the one which we still do not know the purpose of, is low but steadily fluctuates. In other Senavers, similar patterns in the arbitrary connection lead to an abundance of hallucinations. He seems to be no exception, having told me an insane treasonous daydream involving me. Zemel is the most peculiar of the threads, though. Her quattro velocity, energy density, and connection strengths were all well above average. Her power level was high, and her efficiency within the average. This surprised me, as her thread has a significant distinctive leak. The cause of this leak is not inefficiency, but that she cannot use all the quattro that her body demands. I've never seen such a quattro velocity in any Senaver ever. There has been no comparable case. Is this worrying? Heslick asked. It might be, Vestas said. More worrying for us, though, and not for her. Don't worry, Heslick said. This team of Senaver is well within my sights, Vestas, especially since they have sabotaged an agent of mine. What will you do? Vestas asked. The board leaned in, anticipating the answer of their great Farah. Heslick held himself with confidence. He placed his palms upon the table and grinned. For the moment, I will shift you around, he said. You will bring your studies back here to the Empire's castle base. We will begin work on the wireless power, away from the distractions of the Argols in Melbourne. Some Senaver missionaries will stay to guard the library. Vestas sighed in relief. The labs in the castle of the Electric Throne were much nicer and safer than those cramped quarters in Melbourne. Bokeeden, Heslick summoned his chief intelligence officer. Bokeeden's beaked head peeked up, his beady eyes locking with Heslick's. I would like you to follow this team of highly dangerous Senaver fugitives. I want you to find out their plans and stop them from completing them by all means necessary. Heslick reached under the table and produced a set of black handheld devices. He pushed them across the smooth, waxed table to Bokeeden. Bokeeden palmed one of them. It was light and sleek. On the top face were 2 prongs, and on the front face was a red button. His long black talons slipped, and he pushed the button. An arc of electricity cracked between the prongs. He dropped it atop the table. Do I make myself clear? Heslick asked. Yes, Bokeeden said. Bokeeden was a man of very few words. Vestas said the feeling that if Bokeeden wanted to talk to you, he would never do it out loud. How is your quattro tracker? Hesslich asked. Bokeeden clipped the devices to a hook on his hip. Exceptional, Bokeeden responded. And her illness? Controlled. Excellent, Hesslich smiled. His fingers pented as his plan came together. Be prepared for anything, Bokeeden, Hesslich warned. I have a feeling that they've got bizarre plans in mind. Bokeeden dipped his head and considered his mission. Vestas could see his wings rustling behind his back, as if they responded to his thoughts. Vestas was finally at peace now that the attention had been taken away from him, and his presentation didn't end in a failure. The rest of the meeting happened in the background of his mind, whilst he contemplated his own brilliance. Oh, you've done it again, Vestas, he told himself, saving the world one boardroom meeting at a time.